Your reporting notes that Brookfield maintained over $3 billion in politically sensitive investments connected to China and its state-linked real estate and energy companies. Can you explain how Prime Minister Carney's role in Brookfield's ties to the regime in China?
Sure, I'll go off memory of my own reporting. Thinking of that story, which I wrote in the lead up to the federal election, I researched into Brookfield's investments in China. And on the real estate file, I noted that after 2015, Brookfield had made very substantial China-based real estate investments. And due to my knowledge of Beijing's United Front networks, I noted that one of the key Hong Kong investors connected to the projects in which Brookfield was investing was part of China's political consultative conference. That was important to me because the Central Intelligence Agency notes that people on that high-level Chinese communist entity are involved, the CIA says, in Beijing's sort of global United Front networks. That's how the Chinese Communist Party brings influential people together. So I noted in my reporting that for Brookfield to get access to that same type of investment project on a major real estate deal in China, together with a very elite Hong Kong real estate tycoon, certainly in my learned opinion, it would take a special kind of access to get that kind of deal. So then tracking forward through when Prime Minister Carney joins Brookfield, in the surrounding years, I noted that the real estate market in China had plummeted. At some point, Brookfield needed to secure some, let's call it sort of a re-injection of capital. And it turned out that it emerged that the Bank of China, as others have reported, was involved in bridging some capital to reinfuse that deal in China's troubled real estate market. So stepping back from that, I noted that people in Mr. Carney's position in Brookfield's, Mr. Carney also traveling to China to meet with senior Communist Party officials around the timing of the Bank of China, assisting Brookfield with their real estate investment. That would certainly, in my mind, raise, the questions around access and influence.
Mr. Carney was the chair at Brookfield during that time. Then he enters public office. You talk about his ties, relationships with the regime in China. Is there any evidence to suggest that those ties have been maintained since he's entered elected office?
Well, in my research focusing on Brookfield, which is the nature already in previous testimony, I heard Brookfield and Mr. Carney's 103 potential investment vulnerabilities come up. Look, my work is based on open source investigations, and Mr. Carney, I noted in the timeline back to his days with the Bank of England, had worked on establishing a special relationship between the Bank of England and the Bank of China, and which is, of course, controlled by the Chinese Communist Party in terms of global monetary systems. So I felt that was important as a researcher. Through the years, Mr. Carney, when he joins Brookfield, prior to entering politics, repeatedly travels to Beijing and meets with senior officials, including President Xi Jinping. And I noted that for business persons at that time of Mr. Carney's stature to appear with Xi Jinping, again, as China's economy is in need of foreign investment, and while investments into China are becoming more dangerous in the view of some Western capitalists, having Mr. Carney be in those meetings, I do think is important. And you could say fairly is beneficial to Xi Jinping, as it would be beneficial to Mark Carney, the business person, in his time at Brookfield. So when we enter Mr. Carney's race to become the Liberal nominee for Prime Minister, I did note that as the Globe and Mail broke the story that Mr. Carney met with an entity called the Jiangsu Chamber of Commerce in Toronto, I was very aware already that that Commerce Department had overt ties to the United Front Work Department. And indeed, politically connected Canadians are honorary chairs with that entity. So I do think there's much reporting that hasn't come out on exactly what the Jiangsu Chamber of Commerce is and what Mr. Carney's meeting, which he denied at first, as you know, he denied elements of the Globe and Mail's reporting. So there's controversy around what really happened in that meeting.
Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I appreciate your answers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cooper, I want to ask you some questions about Brookfield, given your investigative journalism on Brookfield. Brookfield has significant investments in Beijing state-linked enterprises, more than $3 billion of investments, correct?
Correct.
And during his tenure as chair of Brookfield, Mark Carney played a significant role in expanding Brookfield's footprint in the PRC, correct?
Recalling my research, his work into, I believe it was green power businesses with connections to China was an expansion, yes.
Was involved in the refinancing in 2019 in relation to Shanghai commercial real estate worth billions.
That investment continued into his time taking over an executive role with Brookfield, yes.
And would it be fair to characterize Brookfield's investments in the PRC as politically sensitive?
In my view, as an expert on China's United Front system, as I said before, the nature of that real estate investment and the other parties involved, I do believe it would very much touch on the Chinese Communist Party's control.
And so would it be accurate to say that the Beijing-based communist regime has a significant amount of leverage over Brookfield with respect to its investments, and that if Brookfield wants to make a return on its investments, it would be very much in Brookfield's interest to maintain a good relationship with the Beijing-based communist regime? I think that would be fair, wouldn't it?
At a basic level, I do think it's fair that international business persons, even of the type of Michael Bloomberg, have been recognized to take into consideration the Communist Party's wishes, yes.
We have a prime minister who has significant financial interests tied to Brookfield, worth millions, and we have Brookfield, in turn, being deeply intertwined with a communist regime based in Beijing. On a broad level, shouldn't that concern Canadians? Vis-a-vis the Prime Minister, in fulfilling his duty to put Canada's interests first when his private financial interests in Brookfield are deep, which in turn is deeply intertwined with the PRC.
In fairness, I think business analysts would say it's almost impossible for international business persons to not be doing business with Chinese state entities in some ways. But I do think it's fair to say if a company has a very strong balance towards businesses in China, such as the real estate investment or the green investments I've talked about, Canadians should be aware of that, definitely.
And Mark Carney, as recently as October of 2024, while he was advising the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, as his economic advisor, went over to Beijing, met with, in secret meetings, among others, the deputy governor of Beijing's central bank, and 2 weeks later secures a $250 million loan from Brookfield. Not anyone can just do that, can they? Unless they have significant ties with the regime at the highest levels.
There's no question. I noted the timeline of that visit to China end the deal, securing funding from the Bank of China. It's not to say that there's a definite tie there, but the timing is interesting and I think relevant.
And I just want to ask you about Brookfield's real estate investments. You referenced an individual who is connected to the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which the CIA has identified as a United Front entity. That individual is Vincent Lo, correct?
That's correct.
And Vincent Lo served as Brookfield's primary real estate partner, or one of their primary partners in the region, right?
To my recollection, he was a key partner on that development.
And Lo would have played that role during the time that Carney was chair of Brookfield, involved in real estate in the PRC, right?
If the structure of the deal continues, which I believe so, that would be the case.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Earlier, you talked about the ties between Brookfield, China, Mr. Carney. I was thinking about everything that was done to try to counter Chinese foreign interference in Canada and in our political lives during the previous Parliament. I was also reflecting on the bill that we just tabled so that we don't end up with child slaves and that we are not purchasing products steeped in blood. Is this not a potential conflict of interest with a general scope? You have carried out studies and research. Do you believe that the government, starting with its Prime Minister, would vote for such a large impact bill? Or should they avoid it, given the interests that need to be protected for Brookfield and interests that are shared with China, that they should vote against such a bill? That is a conflict of interest that might not have a direct impact on my blind trusts, but it would have a more general impact and has a real conflict of interest. I would like you to share your point of view, because some might say that conflicts of interest with a general impact aren't significant, but when you have the power to make decisions that would benefit your own investments, well, that's what we're talking about today. I would like to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for the question. I think that is a question that gets to the heart of the decisions before you with the Conflict Act and the current ethics regime, and even the global trade issues which Ottawa is confronted with. I'd say that if we look at what, I think it's helpful to raise the example of what is happening in the government of Keir Starmer right now. There's a controversy reported on every day by British media with regards to an alleged case of Chinese interference of insiders getting information on critics of China and allegedly providing it through the Ministry of State Security to high levels of the Chinese Communist Party. I noted that powerful American lawmakers were so disconcerted with reports coming out of Britain that they sent a letter to the British ambassador, warning that it appeared that Britain's government had stepped away or potentially politically intervened in a prosecution around the timing of China seeking to construct what's called a mega embassy in Britain, which raises certain concerns. So to your question, honorable member, yes, if you're looking at global trade and the potential of slave-produced goods from Xinjiang coming into Canada, this is a very pertinent issue. I reported on a letter sent from then Senator Marco Rubio and others to the former Minister of Trade, Mary Ng, in which the U.S. lawmakers expressed concern that it seemed that goods were being transshipped through Canada into the United States in a using subterfuge. And so the question again is, was Canada holding up, its end of its deal with the United States and Mexico on trade to bar against slave-produced goods? So indeed, I think the question you raise is there a conflict with regards to how a whole government might take action on a bill, whether we're talking about a bill such as the one raised by MP Michael Chon, or whether the British Parliament, whether some people, due to wanting to keep trade between Britain and Beijing running at full steam, might have intervened in a prosecution about espionage inside Westminster. That's a very important question, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Merci, Monsieur Thériault. Monsieur Hardy, excusez pour 5.
Thank you, Mr. Thériault. Mr. Hardy, you have 5 minutes. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Cooper. I just want to be sure that I understand when we're talking about perception versus public opinion. When you carry out your research as a journalist, what is your process to ensure that you are sharing facts and not opinions? Because I think that that's an important issue. People need to know that journalists are not only sharing their perception. So what is your process?
Thank you for the question. It depends on the journalist. It depends on the training. I can speak to my own experience. I've been trained at the University of Toronto with an undergraduate degree in history, philosophy, and English. So I took that level of learning and I applied it to a journalism program at a school in British Columbia, where you learn the same skills that an honorable member or a lawyer or a regulator might apply to hearing different perspectives, hearing facts or potential facts from different sources, and bringing them into one's capacity to sift those facts. So in gathering the facts and then reporting them, look, there is opinion in reporting, there is assessment, there is getting at the best level of journalism, getting all sides, and then using an expert level understanding of the issue as best as the journalist can, and putting forward a story in good faith to try to help the widest range of citizens understand the issue.
Merci, parce que c'est exactement ce que vous faites. Vous ramenez des faits, vous faites
Thank you, because that's what you're doing. You're sharing facts, you carry out in-depth research, and that's beyond political influence. Of course, there's always some opinion in there, but it is important to share facts so that we can judge them here. You stated that you have listened to our previous meetings, and we have the 3 commissioners, lobbying, ethics, and they all stated that they are underfunded. Same for access to information. Access to information requests were often ignored. Do you believe that it's an issue, especially federally, to have institutions that have mechanisms in place, but they do not have sufficient power to properly maintain the public's trust towards its institutions?
I do believe, if I can speak a little bit broadly, that Canada at a provincial level, as I've said in British Columbia, what I've observed in Ottawa, I believe the same issues present themselves, that Canada is underfunded when it comes to regulatory oversight, especially when it becomes politically sensitive. Again, let me compare British Columbia. Commissioner Austin Cullen of the Cullen Anti-Money Laundering Commission recommended that British Columbia institute an independent officer of the legislature to crack down on money laundering. I would note that that recommendation hasn't been followed in British Columbia. So not only is there no funding behind that most important recommendation on a very important issue for Canada in BC, but there's no position in place. I think the same can be said from what I observe in Ottawa. Funding for a commissioner is needed. There's more funding needed, and it needs to be independent. I'd go further. I believe an independent anti-corruption agency is needed that could, apply investigations where the RCMP may not have the capacity to look at politically sensitive cases.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Écoutez.
Thank you. You are correct. In a crisis, the first reaction is to overcorrect. Do you believe that our democracy is in crisis and that Canadians would need to see their institutions change their actions significantly so that the institutions can rebuild trust and put democracy at the heart of the equation?
Seconds, Mr. Cooper, to answer that one. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. This is my opinion. I've been looking into Ottawa very deeply for about 7 years of reporting. This has regarded money laundering concerns, corruption concerns, political interference concerns. It is my own opinion that Canada, like the British government at this moment, is at a point of crisis where there are questions, good questions for the public that might doubt that their governments are adequately responding to foreign interference and potential integrity and corruption issues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Merci, Mr. Hardy.